Okay, so picture this. This message lands on your desk. The problem? The performance metrics it's talking about, well, they just don't exist. An AI has literally just made something up, and now someone's entire career is hanging in the balance.
In this explainer, we're not just going to talk about AI governance in theory. No, we're going to run a full-on crisis simulation. You're in the hot seat, and you're about to find out what it really means to be a governance operator, not just someone who comments on policy from the sidelines.
All right, it's red alert. The situation is escalating, and it's escalating fast. An AI has gone rogue, a manager has already acted on its bad advice, and guess what? You're in charge of governance. So let's get to your briefing.
So here's the rundown. You've got a third-party AI that's just fabricating data. A manager, who trusted the system, has already taken action based on it. Your legal team is understandably freaking out about liability. And the vendor? They're basically washing their hands of it, saying, hey, the model's working just fine. You're stuck right in the middle. It's time to operate.
Now, look, to handle this, you're not going in alone. You need to assemble your expert crew. Let's think of these core governance competencies as actual specialists inside your control room, each one with a super critical role to play.
First up, you've got your analyst. This person is a master of what we call decomposition. Their whole job is to cut through all the noise and tell you exactly where your power is. They map what you can actually influence, like system prompts, versus what's a total black box, like the vendor's deep-down model.
Next, meet your detective. This is your expert in pattern recognition. They see the entire chain of events, connecting that technical AI glitch to the, let's be honest, very human tendency to just blindly trust an automated system.
And rounding out the crew, you have your commander, who is all about priority logic. See, when your teams are stuck and can't agree, the commander doesn't just guess. They execute the playbook, the rules you already agreed on, to make that final, difficult call with total clarity.
All right, the crew's here. Time to get to work. We're shifting from setup to action. We're going to use their skills to diagnose the real root of this crisis.
So your analyst steps up first, and they ask the most fundamental question of all. Let's forget the vendor's black box for a second. What parts of this system do we actually have our hands on?
And here's the answer they come back with. The key is to stop worrying about what you can't control, like the vendor's training data, and focus on what you absolutely can. And that's the prompts you send, the system configuration, and, this is the big one, the human processes that decide if an AI's output ever becomes a real-world action.
Okay, now your detective comes back with a report, and this is absolutely critical. This isn't just one problem, it's two. You have a technical pattern, the AI is hallucinating, it's making stuff up, but you also have a human pattern. A manager fell for automation bias, trusting the machine without even checking its work. You know, fixing just one of these without the other, that's not going to solve a thing.
So, the diagnosis is in. You know what's broken, and you know why. And now comes the hard part. Your teams are giving you totally conflicting advice, and you have to be the one to make the call.
So you've got legal in one ear, and they are screaming about liability and the potential harm to employees. Their recommendation is crystal clear: shut it down now. But then in your other ear, you've got the HR team worried about disrupting business. They're arguing, hey, let's just patch it and keep an eye on it. This, right here, is the classic governance dilemma.
So what's the call? What do? You pause. You hit the switch.
But here's the most important part. This is not a gut call. It's an operational decision based on that priority logic we talked about. Your governance framework already has a rule for this exact situation. When there is a high risk to safety, safety always wins. The decision was basically made before the crisis even started.
But listen, hitting that pause button, that's not the end of the story. Not even close. In fact, for a real governance operator, this is where the work truly begins. Now you have to manage the shutdown, document everything, and handle the fallout.
So what happens next? These are the immediate operational moves you make. 1. You suspend all user access to that faulty feature. 2. You slap a big warning banner on the tool's interface, letting everyone know there might be inaccuracies. And 3. You trigger a manual review of every single role fit recommendation that system has ever made.
Okay, next up, you have to log something called governance debt. Think of it like technical debt, but for your rules. Let's say you had to use a quick and dirty fix just to stop the immediate harm. You have to log that shortcut. You write down what you skipped, why you skipped it, in this case for speed, and you set a hard deadline to circle back and fix it the right way. This keeps those emergency patches from becoming permanent, ticking time bomb.
And even with the system completely shut down, you are not in the clear. You got to assess what's called residual risk. What about all the past decisions that were influenced by bad data? Where is that false information still living in your logs? And what about your reputation, or the users who still think the tool is trustworthy? These are the ghosts in the machine that you now have to hunt down.
Okay, so we've navigated the crisis. Let's zoom out for a second. Because the whole point of this exercise isn't just to solve this one problem, is to build the kind of operator's mindset that prevents the next one.
Because these are the classic traps that so many organizations fall right into. They write these vague ethical slogans instead of hard, enforceable rules. They just blame the vendor instead of taking responsibility for how they actually use the tool. They buckle under business pressure, and they're afraid to hit that pause button. And of course, they let temporary fixes become permanent, hidden problems.
And all of this really boils down to the single most important lesson from this entire simulation. Your job isn't to be a policy commentator, debating ethics from the sidelines. Your job is to be a governance operator, someone who creates rules you can actually enforce, executes them under extreme pressure, and documents every single step along the way.
So let's wrap this up with a question directly for you. Put yourself back in that control room. The alarms are blaring, legal and HR at each other's throats. What part of that whole process would have been the absolute hardest for you to handle? Your answer to that? Well, it tells you exactly where you need to start strengthening your own operational mindset.